Welcome back to our channel, devoted fans. Today is a beautiful, dramatic day to dive deep into the latest heart-stopping twists on the bold and the beautiful. The tension in Los Angeles has reached an absolute boiling point, and we have every single detail of the emotional wreckage to unpack. Let's jump right into the drama. The misty, early morning light of dawn crept over the Los Angeles coastline, casting long, melancholic shadows across the Forrester beach house. The rhythmic crashing of the ocean waves usually provided a sense of peace, but on this particular morning, the atmosphere was thick with suffocating tension and unspoken fears. Inside the beach house, R.J. Forrester and Electra Forrester were moving in absolute silence, hurriedly packing their belongings. Their desperate goal was simple: to sneak out of the house before the sun fully rose, hoping to escape the suffocating scrutiny of their warring families. The corporate explosion caused by Hope Logan's defection to Katie's fashion house had turned their lives into a battlefield, and Ridge Forrester's relentless, hypocritical ultimatums had left Electra feeling completely trapped. She just wanted to breathe, and RJ, ever the opportunistic but protective suitor, was determined to be her knight in shining armor. As they stepped out into the cool, salty morning air, RJ gently intertwined his fingers with Electra's. It was a silent gesture of solidarity and budding romance. RJ had capitalized on the catastrophic implosion of Will Spencer's life, stepping in to offer Electra the stability and warmth that Will had violently shattered. The bruises on RJ's face from Will's brutal physical assault were still fading, serving as a constant, ugly reminder of the danger they were trying to leave behind. Electra held onto RJ's hand tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. She had permanently ended her relationship with Will, throwing her necklace at him in a moment of pure, horrified clarity. She believed that by leaving the beach house at dawn, she was finally closing the darkest chapter of her romantic life. However, they were completely unaware that they were being watched. Parked in the shadows just down the driveway, cloaked by the morning fog, sat Will Spencer in his sleek sports car. Will had not slept a single wink. He had spent the entire night wide awake, his eyes bloodshot and his mind spiraling into a dark, obsessive abyss. The crushing weight of the corporate secrets he had been forced to keep the hope for the future diamond, the rival jewelry line. The defection of Hope Logan had completely broken his sanity. He had lost the woman he loved because he was forced to be a loyal soldier in a corporate war orchestrated by his mother, Katie Logan, and his father, Bill Spencer. Will was drowning in a toxic mixture of profound guilt, paralyzing isolation, and a burning, desperate refusal to let R.J. Forrester steal his future. The moment R.J. and Electra's footsteps crunched on the gravel driveway, the eerie silence of the dawn was violently shattered. The aggressive, deafening roar of a high-performance engine echoed through the beach house property. Before R.J. and Electra could even process what was happening, Will slammed his foot on the gas pedal. The sports car surged forward with terrifying speed, tires screeching against the pavement, before swerving sharply and slamming on the brakes. The vehicle came to a halting, horizontal stop, perfectly barricading the only exit path leading away from the beach house. The bright headlights cut through the fog, blinding RJ and Electra and physically blocking their path to freedom. Instinct took over immediately, remembering the brutal, unhinged violence that Will had unleashed upon him just days prior. RJ fiercely pushed Electra behind his back, shielding her from what he assumed would be another physical attack. RJ braced himself, his muscles tensing, fully prepared to defend himself and the woman he loved against the unpredictable wrath of the Spencer heir. Electra gasped, her heart dropping into her stomach as she peered over RJ's shoulder, terrified of the monster she believed Will had become. The physical barrier of the sports car was a stark, terrifying manifestation of the emotional prison Will was trying to keep her in. But what happened next completely shattered all of their expectations. The driver's side door swung open, and while Spencer stepped out into the cold morning air, he did not have his fists raised. His posture was not aggressive or threatening. Instead, Will stumbled out of the car looking utterly destroyed. He was a broken, shattered shell of the proud young man he used to be. Tears were streaming down his face, his chest heaving with uncontrollable sobs. The sight of RJ holding Electra's hand had completely broken whatever fragile resolve Will had left. He collapsed against the side of his car, his emotional agony spilling out into the dawn air. Will looked directly at Electra, his voice cracking with a level of desperation that sent shivers down her spine. He didn't use physical force, he used his profound vulnerability. Will begged Electra to stop, to look at him, and to remember the beautiful, magical love they had shared before the corporate espionage and family rivalries had poisoned their lives. He pleaded with her to remember the man he truly was, not the violent stranger he had become under the suffocating pressure of Katie and Bill's ruthless demands. His tears were a raw, unfiltered display of a young man who had lost absolutely everything and was standing on the precipice of total despair. The emotional atmosphere shifted dramatically as Will turned his tear-filled, bloodshot eyes toward RJ. Will's sorrow morphed into a desperate, verbal attack. He pointed a trembling finger at RJ, fiercely blaming the Forrester heir for manipulating the entire situation. Will accused RJ of being a calculated predator who had intentionally used Will's forced secrecy and subsequent mental breakdown to slither his way into Electra's heart. Will cried out that RJ didn't truly love Electra, but rather saw her as a prize to be won in the endless, toxic war between the Forresters and the Spencers. Will's words were a calculated psychological strike designed to plant seeds of doubt in Electra's mind about RJ's true, opportunistic motives. RJ was absolutely furious. The hypocrisy and the sheer audacity of Will's accusations made RJ's blood boil. RJ stepped forward, trying to physically push Will away from the car and clear the path for Electra. RJ's voice was firm and laced with anger as he demanded that Will back off and respect Electra's boundaries. RJ fiercely reminded Will of the physical trauma he had inflicted, pointing to his own bruised face as living proof of Will's dangerous instability. RJ yelled that Will had no one to blame but himself, that his lies, his secrets, and his uncontrollable, violent temper were the true reasons Electra was walking away. RJ fought valiantly to maintain his role as the protector, trying to break the hypnotic, tragic spell that Will was attempting to cast over them. However, RJ's physical intervention and logical arguments were completely overpowered by the sheer magnitude of Will's emotional breakdown. Will didn't fight back against RJ's shoves. He simply let himself be pushed, keeping his tearful, pleading eyes locked entirely on Electra. This was a profound, masterful display of psychological warfare. By refusing to engage in physical violence and instead presenting himself as a helpless, broken victim of circumstance, Will bypassed Electra's logic and directly targeted her deepest vulnerabilities. He was weaponizing his own despair, turning his shattered heart into a chain designed to bind Electra to him. Electra stood paralyzed on the gravel driveway, her mind a swirling tornado of conflicting emotions. Just hours ago, she had been so resolute in her decision. She had thrown her necklace at Will, disgusted by his violence and his lies, and she had firmly chosen the safety and warmth that RJ offered. But now, looking at the sobbing, trembling boy leaning against the sports car, her fierce resolve began to crumble. Electra is a Forrester, raised in a world of fierce independence, but she possesses a deeply compassionate and soft heart. Seeing Will so completely and utterly destroyed triggered a profound wave of empathy that she could not easily suppress. The inner conflict tearing Electra apart was agonizing. On one hand, she remembered the terrifying look in Will's eyes when he was punching RJ, a memory that still caused her to wake up in a cold sweat. But on the other hand, she saw a young man who had been manipulated by his own mother, Katie Logan, into keeping corporate secrets that ultimately destroyed his sanity. Electra began to hesitate. The firm grip she had on RJ's hand slowly began to loosen. She wasn't hesitating because she wanted to run back into Will's arms for a romantic reunion. She was hesitating out of a deep, paralyzing fear for Will's safety. Electra realized in that chilling dawn moment that Will was standing on the edge of a very dangerous, metaphorical cliff. His desperation was palpable, radiating from him in waves of dark, chaotic energy. Electra was suddenly gripped by a terrifying thought. If she walked away right now, if she stepped around that sports car and left Will alone in the fog, what would he do? Would his absolute despair push him to do something irreversible? Would he engage in an act of tragic self-destruction? The weight of Will's life suddenly felt like it was resting squarely on her shoulders, a psychological burden that she was entirely unprepared to carry. The scene at the beach house dissolved into a tragic, emotional stalemate. The morning sun finally began to break through the fog, illuminating the devastating triangle. Will Spencer, crying and broken, leaning against the car that blocked their path. R.J. Forrester, standing tall and protective, his frustration mounting as he realized he was losing the psychological battle. And Electra Forrester, caught perfectly in the middle, held hostage not by physical force, but by her own profound empathy and the terrifying, self-destructive aura radiating from her ex-boyfriend. It was a master class in emotional manipulation, whether Will intended it to be or not, and it left all three of them trapped in a moment of agonizing uncertainty. This heart-wrenching confrontation is a direct, tragic consequence of the larger corporate war raging between the Forresters and the Spencers. Ridge Forrester's hypocritical demands condemning Will's violence while ignoring his own physical assault on Bill Spencer had only escalated the tension. Katie Logan's ruthless business strategies regarding Hope's defection had succeeded in launching a fashion empire, but they had effectively destroyed her son's life in the process. The collateral damage of the Hope by Logan launch was no longer just about fashion lines and media headlines. It was about the shattered minds and broken hearts of the younger generation who were paying the ultimate price for their parents' sins. As the waves crashed against the shore, the ultimate question hung heavily in the air. What will Electra do next? Will she sacrifice her own hard-won peace and her budding, healthy romance with RJ to stay and save Will from his own inner demons? Or will she find the immense strength to step around that sports car, prioritizing her own mental health, and leave the Spencer heir to face his tragic fate alone? The psychological grip Will has on her is terrifyingly strong, and the fallout from this dawn confrontation will undoubtedly change the landscape of their lives forever.